The bear's blood trail had gone cold twice already, but Sarah Chen never lost it for long. 3 days of tracking through the Canadian Rockies had taught her every nuance of this particular animal's movement patterns. Behind her, Rangers Mike Thompson and David Blackwood maintained their steady pace, conserving energy while scanning the wilderness with practiced ease. "Trail's getting fresher," Sarah murmured, noting the deeper impressions in the soft earth. The wounded grizzly was tiring, its gait becoming irregular. Natural behavior for most predators was to keep moving when injured, but they all eventually made mistakes. It was simply a matter of time. None of them noticed the shimmer in the air above the tree line, where the Kazari observation post maintained its vigilance. The aliens had been watching this particular group for 2 days, their contempt growing with each hour. Sub-Commander Vexkar couldn't understand why these primitive beings would waste so much energy on such an inefficient hunting method. They persist in following a single prey for days. He noted in his log, mandibles clicking with derision. No ambush tactics, no proper use of their primitive projectile weapons. They simply walk. Even their apex predators flee from them. And they follow. Inefficient. Wasteful. This species will make excellent sport for the coming harvest. The hunting party below came to a sudden stop. Sarah's head tilted slightly, reminding Vexkar of prey species detecting a predator. But that was impossible. Their cloaking technology was perfect, tested against species far more advanced than these humans. "Dave," Sarah called out quietly, "remember that workshop you gave about predator impact on bird behavior?" David Blackwood nodded slowly, his eyes scanning the canopy. "Local birds have been circling the same spots for the past hour. Not landing, not feeding. Like something's disturbing them, but not moving." Mike Thompson unslung his rifle. The motion casual but deliberate. "Reminds me of Baghdad. Local wildlife always knew when something was off, even if our tech couldn't spot it." The Kazari observation team watched with mild curiosity as the humans began moving in a search pattern. Their primitive behavior was interesting, but ultimately futile. No pre-FTL civilization had ever detected their advanced cloaking systems. Sarah stopped directly beneath the observation post. "Think about it. We've been tracking this bear for 3 days. In that time, we've seen elk, moose, 3 wolf packs, normal predator-prey behaviors. But for the past 6 hours, everything's been acting like there's an apex predator present, except there isn't one. Not a natural one anyway." Vexkar felt the first stirring of unease. These humans weren't just wandering. They were analyzing patterns, using the behavior of local fauna as a detection system. It was unexpected. "There," Mike said softly, raising his rifle. "Air distortion. Like heat waves, but moving against the wind." The Kazari commander made a quick decision. "Initiate emergency protocols. Transmit all observations to the fleet. These humans are more observant than anticipated. They must not." The first shot caught the cloaking field generator, designed to withstand energy weapons but not the crude kinetic impact of a high-powered rifle round. As the observation post's outline became visible, Sarah was already calling in coordinates to the nearest military base. The Kazari crew responded with plasma fire, superheating the air around the humans. But the Rangers had already scattered, using pre-planned evacuation routes practiced during their bear hunt. Each took up positions that reminded Vexkar of persistence hunters of old. No direct confrontation, just steady, coordinated pressure from multiple angles. "Fascinating adaptation," Vexkar noted in his final transmission. "They hunt large prey by forcing it to keep moving until exhaustion. Now they apply the same technique to us. The High Command must be warned. These humans, they're not just prey. They're..." The transmission cut off as David's explosive round found the post's power core. The resulting detonation echoed through the mountains, scaring birds into flight. In the distance, their wounded bear likely found new energy to run. Sarah surveyed the wreckage, her expression grim. Among the twisted alien metals, she found data crystals and fragments of what looked like biological samples. "Call it in," she ordered. "Full containment team. And get me someone who can translate alien script. They were taking notes on us. I want to know what they learned." And the bear? Mike asked, half joking. Sarah checked the alien weapon she'd scavenged, testing its weight. Something tells me we're about to be hunting bigger game. She looked up at the sky, where the Khazari distress signal was already reaching their fleet. Much bigger. The Rangers didn't know it yet, but they had just initiated humanity's first contact with the galaxy's apex predators. In the coming months, the Khazari would learn a harsh lesson about the difference between being an apex predator and being a species that had spent its entire evolution learning to hunt apex predators. The hunt was about to begin, and for the first time in their species' history, the Khazari would learn what it meant to be prey. Fleet Commander Ixovan watched the tactical display with growing unease. The invasion of Earth had begun exactly as planned. Overwhelming force, simultaneous strikes on military installations, and show-of-force demonstrations to break civilian morale. But something was wrong, deeply wrong. Status report, he demanded, mandibles clicking in irritation. Sir, we've secured the designated landing zones, but the tactical officer's scales shifted in distress. The cities are empty, not abandoned, evacuated with purpose. We're finding automated defense systems, but they're unusual. On the main screen, footage showed a Khazari assault team entering what their intelligence indicated was a crucial military facility in a place called Denver. The doors were open, no resistance. The team moved in with perfect predatory grace, only to find themselves engaged by swarms of crude but effective autonomous drones. These aren't military devices, the weapons analyst noted. They're modified civilian entertainment units, gaming devices retrofitted with explosive charges and basic AI. They're learning our movement patterns. In another sector, a Khazari strike force reported finding an entire manufacturing district converted into a maze of traps and automated defenses. The humans had turned their own industrial infrastructure into weapons, but not in any way Khazari military doctrine could have predicted. Sir, the communications officer's scales flared in alarm. The humans, they're broadcasting our victories. As they should, Ixovan approved. Let them witness their defeat. No, sir, they're analyzing them. Their global information network is filled with discussions, breakdowns of our tactical patterns. Civilians are sharing observations about our technology's limitations. They're treating our combat footage like training materials. Ixovan watched as human communication channels filled with detailed analyses. Civilians were identifying weak points in Khazari armor, calculating weapon cooldown rates, developing countermeasures using local materials. Every victory the Khazari broadcast was being turned into a learning opportunity. A new alert flashed. Sir, Ground Force 7 reports heavy casualties. The humans, they're not just fighting. They're hunting specific targets. Officers, technical specialists. They're gathering intelligence with each engagement. The tactical display showed a pattern that should have been impossible. Human resistance wasn't random. They were systematically capturing Khazari technology, each piece carefully chosen. A weapons cache here, a communications array there. Not taking everything, selecting specific components with unsettling precision. How are they coordinating this? Ixovan demanded. We've destroyed their military command structure. Sir, they're not coordinating. Not in any way we recognize. Their civilian population is self-organizing. They're sharing information, adapting strategies, all without central command. Every human we face seems to think like a tactical officer. The truth hit Ixovan like a physical blow. The Khazari had evolved as ambush predators, their entire society built around hierarchical hunting groups. But humans had evolved chasing prey across vast distances. Their entire species thought in terms of long-term strategy. New contact. The sensor officer's scales were practically white with stress. Multiple human counterattacks, they're using our own tactics against us, modified for their environment. The display showed human strike teams emerging from hidden bunkers, using salvaged Khazari technology combined with their own crude but effective weapons. They didn't fight like prey species. They fought like hunters who had spent generations studying predator tactics. Sir, the cultural analyst spoke quietly. I've been studying their entertainment media, their fiction. For centuries, they've been imagining scenarios like this, creating strategies, discussing countermeasures. Their entire species has been mentally preparing for this kind of war for generations. Exovan watched as another Khazari forward base went dark. The humans weren't just resisting. They were learning, adapting, and teaching each other with terrifying speed. Every Khazari victory was Pyrrhic, giving the humans more insight into their methods. They're not just prey, he realized. They're hunters who've spent their entire history learning from predators. And now they're hunting us. The tactical display flickered as another human counterattack began. This time, the pattern was clear. They weren't fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting for knowledge. Each engagement was a lesson, each casualty a textbook. The Khazari had come to hunt. Instead, they found themselves in a war of adaptation against a species that had turned learning itself into a weapon. The art of prey, it seemed, was far more dangerous than the art of predators. And this was only the beginning. Dr. Maya Rodriguez held the captured Khazari plasma rifle with the reverence of a scholar handling an ancient text. Around her makeshift lab in the Colorado Resistance bunker, dozens of similar weapons lay partially disassembled, each tagged with detailed notes. The beauty isn't in the weapon itself, she explained to the gathered resistance fighters. It's in what it tells us about them. Look at the grip configuration, the weight distribution. Everything about their technology screams ambushed predator. She lifted the weapon, demonstrating its natural firing position. They're built for sudden, overwhelming force. All their equipment is designed for brief, intense encounters. But that's not how we hunt, is it? Private Chen, one of the rangers from the first contact incident, nodded in understanding. We're persistence hunters. We wear things down. Exactly. Maya activated a holographic display showing modified human weapons incorporating Khazari technology. Their plasma coils overheat because they never needed sustained fire. We've modified them with cooling systems based on termite mounds, natural convection cooling. Their weapons are perfect for an ambush. We're making them perfect for a chase. Across the room, Communications Officer Jackson was doing something that would have seemed absurd 3 months ago, practicing Khazari hunting calls. The aliens used complex vocalizations during combat, signals that were meant to be indecipherable to prey species. They never considered that prey might learn to speak predator, Jackson said between attempts. Their language is based on hunting patterns. Once you understand that, you can predict their tactics just by listening. The bunker's walls shook as distant explosions marked another Khazari bombing run. No one flinched. They'd learned the aliens' attack patterns weeks ago. Here's the latest modification, Maya said, unveiling a new weapon design. We've taken their motion trackers and reversed the logic. Instead of detecting movement, it detects stillness, perfect for spotting their ambush positions. A young technician raised her hand. Why do they keep using the same tactics? They must know we're adapting. Because they can't adapt as quickly as we can, Maya explained. Their entire society is built on being the perfect predator. But that's their weakness. They've never had to change to evolve. We've spent our entire history adapting to new challenges. The briefing was interrupted by an alert from the surface. A Khazari raiding party had been detected, but instead of panic, the resistance fighters moved with calm purpose. They'd been preparing for this. Remember, Maya called out as the teams deployed, use their own calls against them. Let them hear their hunting signals coming from shadows. Make them question every instinct they have. The battle that followed would become legendary among the Khazari. Human fighters emerged from hidden positions, using modified alien weapons that shouldn't have been possible. The aliens' own hunting calls echoed from multiple directions, disrupting their coordination. But the true psychological impact came from the humans' innovations. Khazari soldiers found their ambush positions revealed by devices that turned their stillness against them. Their plasma weapons overheated in extended firefights, while human-modified versions maintained sustained fire. Most disturbing were the hybrid weapons the humans had created. Captured alien technology merged with primitive human tools in ways that violated Khazari engineering principles, but worked with devastating effectiveness. rail guns powered by plasma cores, thermal camouflage systems that mimicked Earth's natural predators. In their command center, the Khazari leaders received reports that shook their understanding of warfare. The humans weren't just using their technology, they were evolving it. Each captured piece of equipment returned to battle in new, unsettling forms. They're not just learning our methods, a Khazari commander observed with growing dread. They're surpassing them. Every weakness we exploit becomes a strength. Every advantage we possessed is turned against us. The humans had turned adaptation itself into a weapon. Each engagement wasn't just a battle. It was an experiment, a lesson, an opportunity to evolve. The predators were facing their own reflection, twisted and transformed by human ingenuity into something they could barely comprehend. The hunt had become a race of adaptation, and the Khazari were discovering that their perfect predators' instincts were no match for humanity's endless capacity for change. Sub-Commander Kreltax found another cup. This one was still warm, the bitter human stimulant drink they called coffee, leaving a dark rain on his pristine command console. Like the others, there was no indication of how it got there. Another breach, his second-in-command asked, scales rippling with anxiety. Impossible, Kreltax insisted, but his mandibles clicked uncertainly. We've tripled security. Motion sensors, thermal scanning, even atmospheric composition monitors. Nothing could. He stopped as his eyes fell on the datapad next to the cup. It hadn't been there a moment ago. On its screen, in perfect Khazari script, "You're looking in the wrong places." The Montana Mountain Base had been their most secure installation on Earth. Had been until the haunting began. First, it was small things, equipment slightly out of place, unauthorized access logs in the computer systems. Then came the notes, the personal items left in impossible locations, the growing sense that they were being watched by something they couldn't detect. "Sir," a junior officer called out. The night shift reported another incident. They found this in the armory. He held up a worn human military manual, pages marked with detailed notes about Khazari physiology. Sections about their thermal regulation systems were highlighted with handwritten calculations about their optimal operating temperatures. Kreltax felt his scales tighten. They were being studied, analyzed, like specimens in a laboratory. But how? The base's security systems were foolproof. The humans, his xenobiologist suggested, they're not just fighting us, they're learning us. Every detail, every weakness. Security footage showed nothing. Sensor logs reported no anomalies, but every day brought new signs of human presence. They found maps of patrol routes annotated with shift changes, medical texts bookmarked to pages about Khazari pressure points, even recordings of their own communication frequencies analyzed and decoded. The psychological impact was devastating. Khazari warriors, evolved to be the galaxy's perfect predators, were jumping at shadows. Night patrols requested double staffing. Officers checked their quarters for human gifts before sleeping. Perhaps, the base psychologist suggested, we should consider evacuation. Retreat? From prey? Kreltax snarled, but his conviction was weakening. That night, the entire base power grid flickered for exactly 3 seconds. When emergency systems kicked in, they found every display screen showing the same message. Thanks for the lessons. The humans struck an hour later. They emerged from maintenance tunnels, ventilation systems, and hidden passages that shouldn't have existed. Each team moved with precise knowledge of the base's layout and security protocols. As alarms blared, Kreltax received a transmission from Earth orbit. "Sir, our scans show humans have been living inside the base's infrastructure. For months, they mapped your entire operation from the inside." The revelation broke something in the Khazari commander's mind. The prey hadn't just been watching. They'd been living among them, learning their every move, studying their every weakness. How? He demanded as human strike teams methodically took control of the base. How did they remain undetected? The answer came from his own security logs, now decoded by the humans. While Khazari sensors looked for traditional infiltration methods, humans had used the base's own systems as camouflage. They matched their movements to maintenance cycles, their heat signatures masked by equipment patterns, their presence hidden in plain sight. "We studied how your prey hides from you," a captured human explained later. "Then we did it better." The fall of the Montana base marked a turning point in the war. The Khazari learned that no installation was truly secure, no defense perfect. The humans weren't just enemies, they were ghosts, moving unseen through the most sophisticated security, learning and adapting with each passing day. Across Khazari space, a new term entered their language: human fear, the creeping dread of being studied by prey that could not be detected, could not be stopped, and never, ever gave up. The hunters had become the haunted, and their own bases had become hunting grounds for the ghosts they had created. Dr. Sarah Chen, now heading the Xenobiology Division of Earth's Defense Force, stared at the holographic display with growing excitement. Months of studying captured Khazari specimens and combat footage had finally revealed something revolutionary. "Look at their muscle structure," she explained to the assembled military leadership. "High-density, fast-twitch fibers specialized for explosive power. Their entire biology is optimized for ambush predation. But that's not the important part." She switched the display to show comparative endurance charts. The Khazari need rest cycles every 6 hours of active combat. Their metabolism burns hot and fast, perfect for overwhelming prey quickly, but against an enemy that doesn't give them time to rest. General Martinez, graying but sharp as ever, leaned forward, like persistence hunters. "Exactly." Sarah highlighted sections of Khazari biological data. They evolved as perfect predators, but they never faced prey that hunted them back. Their biology is their weakness. They can't maintain prolonged combat operations without significant recovery periods. The discovery transformed the war. Earth's forces reorganized into rotating combat teams. While one group engaged the Khazari, others rested and prepared, maintaining constant pressure on alien positions. The strategy was distinctly human, born from ancestors who had chased prey across savanna until it collapsed from exhaustion. "They don't understand shifts," a captured Khazari officer later revealed. "How can they keep fighting without rest? Where does their strength come from?" Sarah's team developed tactics exploiting this weakness. Human forces would engage Khazari units just long enough to force them to expend energy, then withdraw before the aliens could bring their superior firepower to bear. Another human team would attack from a different direction, forcing the Khazari to react again, and again, and again. The psychological impact was devastating. Khazari commanders, used to decisive victories through overwhelming force, found themselves facing an enemy that simply wouldn't give them time to recover. Their troops grew exhausted, their reaction time slowed, their tactical judgment became impaired. "It's not just physical," Sarah explained in a briefing. "Their entire culture is built around being the apex predator. Being hunted, truly hunted, not just fought, is breaking them on a fundamental level." The evidence was in their behavior. Khazari units began making mistakes typical of exhausted prey animals. They'd bunch together defensively instead of maintaining tactical spacing. They'd expend too much energy on initial contacts, leaving themselves vulnerable to follow-up attacks. Earth's forces learned to read these signs like their ancestors had read wounded prey. They could tell when a Khazari unit was approaching its breaking point by subtle changes in behavior. The aliens' movements would become more erratic, their responses more instinctive than tactical. "We're not just fighting their bodies," Sarah observed. "We're fighting their evolutionary psychology. Every time we force them to run instead of fight, we're challenging their self-image as apex predators." The turning point came at the Battle of the Amazon. A Khazari legion, trapped in the rainforest, faced constant harassment from indigenous guides leading human strike teams. The aliens found themselves in an environment where their advanced technology was less relevant than ancient hunting knowledge. "They're learning fear," a Brazilian tracker noted, "not tactical caution, real, primitive fear, the kind prey feels when it knows it's being hunted." The Khazari command structure struggled to adapt. Their entire military doctrine was based on overwhelming force and decisive victories. They had no paradigm for dealing with an enemy that treated combat like a persistence hunt. Sarah's final report to Earth's leadership was both a tactical assessment and a philosophical observation. The Khazari evolved to be perfect predators, but they stopped evolving once they achieved that goal. Humans never stopped evolving, never stopped adapting. In making themselves perfect, they made themselves vulnerable. In remaining adaptable, we made ourselves unstoppable. The war entered a new phase. The Khazari found themselves facing an enemy that wasn't just fighting their forces, but exploiting their very nature against them. Every engagement became a test of endurance that they were biologically unequipped to win. Evolution had created the perfect predator in the Khazari, but it had created something far more dangerous in humans, a species that had learned to turn the hunt itself into a weapon. Lieutenant Maria Vasquez knelt beside the fallen Khazari patrol leader, carefully removing its command insignia. Her team watched silently as she arranged it alongside others on her tactical vest, not as random trophies, but in specific patterns that would be immediately recognizable to any Khazari who saw them. Remember, she told her squad, we're not just killing them. We're teaching them something their evolution forgot to mention, what it feels like to be hunted. The human resistance had learned the Khazari's own hunting traditions and victory rituals. Now they were turning those customs back on their creators, but with a distinctly human twist that the aliens found deeply disturbing. In a Khazari command center orbiting Earth, Supreme Hunter Karel watched footage of human trophy displays with growing unease. They weren't random collections. They told stories. Each arrangement followed Khazari victory patterns, but modified in ways that spoke of detailed study of their culture. They're not just mimicking us, his cultural analyst noted. They're improving on our traditions, adding their own evolutionary history to ours. The humans had begun leaving calling cards at their attack sites, spent shell casings arranged in patterns that precisely mimicked ancient Khazari warning marks, walls marked with kill counts in perfect Khazari script, but incorporating human military unit designations in ways that merged both species' martial traditions. It's psychological warfare, Karel realized, but on a cultural level we've never encountered. They're not just fighting our bodies, they're attacking our identity as hunters. The human approach was methodical. They studied Khazari hunting rituals from captured data cores, then adapted them with human elements. When they claimed trophies, they didn't just take them. They displayed them in ways that told stories of human persistence hunting techniques merged with Khazari traditions. Maria's team had become especially notorious. They left markers at their attack sites that combined Khazari dominance symbols with human endurance hunting patterns. The message was clear. We understand your way of hunting, and we've made it better. Look at this pattern. Karel's analyst pointed to a recent attack site. The humans arranged their kills to mirror the great hunt of Cathar, but they added elements from their own evolutionary history. They're not just killing our warriors, they're educating them. The psychological impact was devastating. Young Khazari warriors, raised on stories of glorious hunts, found themselves facing prey that understood their traditions better than they did. Humans didn't just fight. They turned each engagement into a lesson about the limitations of pure predatory instinct. In her forward base, Maria prepared her team for another raid. The Khazari think being a predator is about overwhelming force, she explained. We're teaching them that true hunting is about understanding your prey so well that you become something more than a simple predator. The humans had learned to time their attacks to the Khazari's rest cycles, striking when the aliens' biology demanded recovery. They'd study Khazari command structures and target specific officers whose deaths would create maximum cultural impact. Each trophy was chosen not just for tactical value, but for its significance in Khazari tradition. Their learning, Maria noted as her team moved out, not just about us, but about themselves. Every time we turned their hunting rituals against them, we forced them to question their assumptions about what it means to be a hunter. The war had become a cultural education program, with humans serving as both teachers and executioners. They weren't just defeating the Khazari, they were forcing them to confront the limitations of their evolutionary path. Karel's final report to the Khazari High Command contained a warning. The humans aren't just fighting us. They're studying us, learning us, becoming us, and then showing us what we could have been if we hadn't stopped evolving when we became the perfect predators. Across Earth, human resistance fighters continued their grim work, each engagement a lesson in the difference between being a predator and being something far more dangerous, a species that had never stopped learning how to hunt better, smarter, and with greater purpose than mere survival. The Khazari had created their own nightmare, prey that understood them better than they understood themselves. Captain Diana Wong watched the holographic display aboard the HSS Persistence, humanity's first reverse-engineered Khazari warship. The stolen vessel hung silently in the asteroid field at the edge of Khazari space, its systems powered down to minimal levels. They'd been waiting here for 9 days. Another supply convoy approaching, her sensor officer whispered, though the Khazari couldn't have heard them even if they shouted. Same route as predicted. Diana allowed herself a small smile. The Khazari were creatures of habit, a legacy of evolution that had never required them to vary their hunting grounds. Time to remind them why their ancestors feared the dark. The Persistence was one of 12 human ships now operating in Khazari territory. Each vessel was a captured prize, modified with human innovations that violated Khazari engineering principles in ways that made their original designers' scales crawl. They still think like ambush predators, Diana had explained to her crew during training. They expect attacks to be fast, decisive. They don't understand how to handle an enemy that can wait for weeks, studying patterns, learning behaviors. The human fleet had turned space itself into terrain for persistence hunting. They'd learned to use asteroid fields and solar radiation belts the way their ancestors had used savanna and forest. Each ship would track Khazari movements, sharing data through quantum encrypted channels that the aliens couldn't detect. Fascinating adaptation, noted Dr. Chen's latest xenobiology report. The Khazari treat space as a series of hunting grounds. Humans treat it as an ecosystem to be understood and exploited. Diana's crew had spent months studying Khazari patrol patterns, supply routes, and communication protocols. They didn't just know their enemies' movements. They understood the evolutionary imperatives driving those movements. Signal from the Endurance, her comm officer reported. They've identified 3 more convoy patterns. The Khazari are creatures of habit even when they know they're being hunted. The human ships had learned to predict Khazari behavior with uncanny accuracy. The aliens' biological need for rest cycles, their instinctive tendency to establish territories, their ritualized response patterns, all became tools for the hunters who had once been prey. They're starting to fear the dark spaces between stars, a captured Khazari officer had revealed. Places where human ships might be waiting, watching, learning. How do you fight an enemy that treats Boyd itself as their hunting ground? Diana gave the order, and the Persistence came to life. Her crew moved with practiced precision, each action timed to exploit Khazari response patterns they'd studied for months. The supply convoy never stood a chance. The human ship emerged from the asteroid field like a ghost, its modified systems confounding Khazari sensors. They struck with precision guided by weeks of observation, disabling key vessels and capturing others before the aliens could mount an effective response. Remember, Diana told her boarding teams, we're not just taking their ships. We're teaching them something about evolution. Every vessel we capture will come back to hunt them, modified by human ingenuity. The captured convoy yielded more than resources. It provided data about Khazari fleet movements, communication protocols, and most importantly, their increasingly erratic responses to human hunting techniques. Their breaking, Diana's tactical officer observed, not their ships or their weapons, their confidence. Every time we turned their own vessels against them, we proved that their evolutionary path wasn't the only valid one. Back on Earth, the unified human command received Diana's report with grim satisfaction. The Khazari were learning what it meant to be hunted by a species that had turned space itself into a tool for persistence hunting. We're not just fighting a war, Diana wrote in her log. We're teaching a lesson about the price of evolutionary stagnation. The Khazari thought they were perfect predators. We're showing them that perfection is a dead end. Adaptation, endless learning, the drive to improve, that's the real path to survival. The stars had become hunting grounds. but not in the way the Khazari understood hunting. Human ships prowled through their territory like the persistence hunters of old, patient, observant, and relentless. They turned the very void into a weapon, using distance and darkness the way their ancestors had used endurance and tracking skills. The perfect predators were learning that space belonged to those who never stopped adapting, never stopped learning, never stopped hunting better ways to survive. High Commander Vexthar, last of the old guard of the Khazari hunting fleet, faced the assembled council with scales dulled by age and wisdom hard-won through defeat. Before him, the younger generation of Khazari leaders waited, their postures showing a subtle but revolutionary change from the aggressive dominance displays of their ancestors. "We were wrong," he began, words that no high commander had ever spoken before. "We thought being the perfect predator meant we had reached the peak of evolution. The humans taught us that perfection is the enemy of survival." The chambers of the High Council, once decorated with trophies of conquest, now displayed something unprecedented: educational materials about other species' hunting techniques. Most prominent were studies of human persistence hunting, their technological adaptation, and their capacity for cultural evolution. "Our children study humans now," a young council member noted, "not as prey, but as teachers. They ask questions our ancestors never considered. What if there is more than one way to hunt? What if the true apex predator is the one that never stops learning?" The war had ended not with a decisive battle, but with a cultural revolution. Young Khazari, raised on stories of human hunting methods, had begun questioning their species' rigid adherence to pure predatory instinct. Dr. Sarah Chen, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the Khazari, had observed the change with fascination. "They're experiencing their own evolutionary leap," she reported, "not physical evolution, but cultural. They're learning that intelligence and adaptability are more powerful than pure predatory perfection." The evidence was everywhere in Khazari society. Their military academies now taught human persistence hunting alongside traditional ambush techniques. Their engineering schools study human adaptations of Khazari technology, learning how flexibility could improve even perfect designs. "We had reached an evolutionary dead end," Vexthar continued. "We thought becoming the perfect predator meant we had won. The humans showed us that the true victory lies in never believing you have won, never stopping your hunt for better ways to survive." The peace treaty that emerged was unprecedented in galactic history. The Khazari didn't surrender, they evolved. Their society transformed from one built solely on predatory dominance to one that valued adaptation and learning. "The humans didn't just defeat us," a young Khazari officer explained to her troops. "They made us better. They showed us that being a hunter means more than being a killer. It means being a student of life itself." Human persistence hunting techniques became required study in Khazari schools. Young aliens learned how their ancestors' pursuit of perfection had nearly led to their downfall, and how their greatest enemies had become their greatest teachers. "Watch how they hunt," instructors would tell their students, showing footage of human operations, not with overwhelming force, but with patience, observation, and constant adaptation. That is the true mark of an apex species. The galaxy watched in amazement as the Khazari, once known only as perfect predators, became something more. They maintained their hunting prowess, but added human-inspired adaptability. Their ships still carried weapons, but also scientific instruments. They still hunted, but now they hunted knowledge as eagerly as they had once hunted prey. Sarah Chen's final report to Earth's government contained a profound observation. "We didn't just win a war. We catalyzed an evolutionary leap in another species. The Khazari are becoming something their ancestors could never have imagined: predators who understand the value of learning from prey." Humanity, having proven themselves the superior hunters, chose a path that their ancestors would have understood instinctively. They became teachers, sharing their knowledge of adaptation and survival with the species that had once hunted them. The stars had become hunting grounds of a different kind. Khazari ships still prowled the galaxy, but now they hunted alongside human vessels, seeking knowledge and understanding rather than conquest and trophies. "We learned from you," Vexthar concluded his address, "that the true apex predator is not the one that achieves perfection, but the one that never stops evolving, never stops learning, never stops seeking better ways to survive. You taught us that the greatest hunt is the hunt for wisdom. The perfect predators had become perfect students, and the galaxy was better for it.